Hi, my name is Rodney Strong. I'm an author based in New Zealand, and I have 11 books out, mostly in cozy mysteries. So the murder mystery style, which is a little bit cleaner, doesn't involve blood and guts and things like that. And I also have a couple of middle grade children's books out as well. So that is me.
That is you. That is you.
That is me.
That is. Hi, Rodney.
Hi, Jodi.
You all right? So, one, you are my furthest so far in regards to interviews. So, Rodney is in New Zealand, which is awesome. Rodney is one of my long time friends, and he really longer than most people in my life, other than relatives, long time friend, which is awesome. And also, Rodney gets the winning high, like the check mark, the high five, because Rodney is the first person that every year says happy birthday to me first. He's the official first person, never misses a beat, but he wins the I say happy birthday to Jodi first, because legitimately first in your country. So yay!
Yeah, and legitimately first. I don't jump the gun. It's because we're like 18 hours ahead of America, so it's not legitimately your birthday over there, but I can go, yep, it says it's her birthday here, so I'm going to wish her happy birthday.
Which I love. So, all right, let's see. Where do we start? So number one, love seeing Rodney's face right now. And so before anyone hears about our relationship, our relationship will come in through the story, but let's just start at the very beginning. So tell people, who is Rodney? Who is Rodney? Let's talk about who the person is before the education and before the school. Before sure. the books.
Sure. Okay. So I am older than I would like to admit, but I'll be 52 this year. I'm married. I've got 2 children. I've got a 10
Stop.
and a half.
No. Dude,
You want me to go right back?
Before, you want me to go right back? Did I have to say that? Rewind, before dude. That. You're killing
me. Who am I? I'm born and bred in Wellington, New Zealand. So I've traveled a lot, but this is my hometown. I couldn't really imagine living anywhere else. This is the place I was raised. This is where my parents lived up until they passed away a few years ago. So this is my roots. This is where I'll always come back to. I did travel quite a bit in my 20s, but I couldn't imagine living anywhere else in the world. It's a great place to live and a great place to grow up in. It's one of those things where we talk about education stuff, but writing is one of those things that when I was in, we call it primary school. I'm not sure. I guess it's grade school, whatever over there. I was, as soon as I could learn to write, I was writing little plays for my classmates to put on, and so it was just something that I always wanted to do, and it was always part of who I was growing up, and through high school, and then getting jobs, and a steady paycheck tends to push dreams of literary fame aside, because you get paid quite regularly for that, whereas you don't necessarily for writing books. So I kind of went away from it for a while, but it was always there. It was always part of who I was, and so I would sort of drift in and out. And 5 years ago.
Wait. All right, so I have to ask a question. So you started writing when you were younger. In primary school, we use primary school as well.
Yep.
Did your parents, where did it come from? Because most people have either a family member or a teacher that got them into it, or there was that captivation of the imagination. So for you, who's the one that actually got the ball rolling for you? Because the majority of kids out there don't just start writing. So where did it come from for you?
I'm not sure I can actually answer that question, because neither of my parents were particularly creative from a writing point of view. They were always into things, a variety of different hobbies and things, but never sort of from a writing point of view. I guess my grandfather was the really creative one. Like when we'd go and visit him, he would be making things out of wood for us to play with. And so there was really kind of that creating something from nothing aspect that really inspired me. But it was just, I don't know if I can answer that. It was just one of those things that has always been who I am. Like even when I'm not writing, I'm thinking about what I want to write. So I can't imagine not writing at all. And it's just, it's I think it's part of my DNA, basically.
Are you an avid reader? Because I mean, obviously, like you're the backdrop of this, of like of this, if the scene is, and there's a lot of books out there. I mean, I see King in there. Like when you see a lot of the classics. I mean, are you the person that just creates the library so that way everyone's like, look at my books? Or I mean, have you read cover to cover? I mean, like what are your reading habits? Because I mean, obviously, there's a lot of kids that are out there that, and you mentioned children's books, and we'll talk about that. But there's a lot of kids that have never owned their own book. And so one of the reasons why I gravitate towards children's books is because it breaks my heart that there are kids that have never owned their own book. And so awards aren't a thing for me, but getting a book in everyone's hand is a big thing for me. When you were a child, were you that, I mean, like writing and creating your own world was your own thing? Or were you just getting excited because you read so much?
Reading, I love reading, and yes, that I have read, all of these books at least twice, and that's what I love about books, is that you can read them and then go back a year later and read them again and pick up things that you've potentially missed. But I've always been a big reader, right from when I learned to read. So, and I will read every day. So that's the last thing I'll do at night. In bed, I'll read, even if it's 1 or 2 pages, just to help me kind of relax a little bit and things. So I think it's really important, if you want to be a writer, that you need to be a reader as well, because I've done some school visits where I've talked to a lot of kids, and that's what I tell them, that if you want to be a writer, you need to be able, you need to sort of enjoy reading, because you need to be able to, you need to be able to appreciate what other people have written. And also it helps ignite your imagination as well. So I think that's a really big driver into why I like writing as well. I mean, early on, some of the stuff, like I've still got the plays that I wrote when I was 7, and I mean that sometimes I cringe when I read them, and sometimes I look at them and go, wow, well that was pretty advanced for them. But back then it was probably more taking something that I'd read or seen on TV and just kind of writing my own scene in that world rather than creating my own worlds. And so the creating the worlds thing just came a little bit later on as I developed those sort of writing skills. But reading definitely is a big part of who I am in terms of relaxing as well.
So you started writing when you were younger. You started, like, the imagination started flowing. Your grandparents were the ones that were creative individuals. And I think that a lot of people forget that, or they just don't think that creativity can come in so many different forms, that they just assume you're a writer, you're a painter, you're a painter, you're a chef, you're a chef. It's only one way. They're not understanding so many different avenues of getting creativity. But then it stopped. So you went from primary school, you're writing, you went to, all right, what's the next level? So primary school, then we go into like higher ed. Like, or I don't know what's your next, what do you call it next?
Well, so we call it college, but you guys call it high school. So
right.
So we go, so we don't have like a junior high and a senior high. We just have high school, and that covers from about age 13 to about 18, and it's just one sort of school. And look, puberty wasn't my friend, so there was a lot going on back then.
Anybody's friends?
Yeah. I don't think so. And so, I did still write. We had English classes, so there was still that creative outlet and things. And that actually gave me exposure to a whole lot of different types of writing as well. So I'd never really considered poetry and plays and things. So it really kind of gave me that opportunity to look at what I might actually like writing, as opposed to this is the only sort of writing that I know. But it never really also occurred to me that that could be something that I could do for a living. It was something that I really enjoyed doing. But this was in the 1980s, and the New Zealand kind of publishing scene back then was very small, and so there was no way a 17-year-old was going to break into that scene. So it was easy to kind of think of it as this nice sort of hobby or a pastime, but I would go out and get a job, a 9-to-5 job in an office, and that would be what I actually did for a living. So and that's
so
what.
Wait, did you graduate from college and get that 9-to-5 job, or did you go? So then you go to university?
Well, I didn't actually go to university. So
okay.
yeah, again, it was one of those things where I left high school the last year, about halfway through, which we could, so in New Zealand, if you get to a certain age, you can leave rather than having to wait till the end of graduation as such. And so I knew I didn't want to go to university because there was nothing at university in terms of courses that or degrees that really took my fancy at the time. So I left halfway through that year. I went and worked for an insurance company, which it was a culture shock going from school to work, but it was a good way to transition into grown-up world and kind of learn how to manage budgets and things like that. And so from there, it just kind of progressed, and I just stayed in 9-to-5 jobs. Apart from a couple of years, I went over to America, did Camp America, which is where we met.
Years? Wait. How many years did you stay in? You're trying to rush me, and I'm not gonna be rushed, Mr. Strong. I'm not gonna be rushed. So how many years?
It's a long life to try and fit in.
No, and I'm gonna fit it in. So there we go. So how many? I mean, you went from college, high school to finance, which is finance of all things is not the easiest thing to gravitate towards. And so how does one even go into that realm? Because I've had a CPA since I was 18 years old for a reason. I could tell when something's being stolen out of my accounts, but I can't, it's not what I do. So you went right into one of those most challenging skill sets that most people have all these degrees to get it right. And so how did you do it? And also how long did you stay with it?
So, when I left, it was what was happening in the New Zealand economy was school leavers effectively, without too many qualifications or without any qualifications at all, you could walk into a job at an insurance company or a bank. Those were your two kind of fallback options, where they're very level entry positions where you could, a lot of it's data entry, basic record keeping, that kind of stuff. So you didn't really need to have the qualifications or the experience to go with it, because you weren't dealing with people's finances or livelihoods or things. So that was kind of the way to ease into that kind of environment. And then you just kind of slowly progress from there. So it was enjoyable work, but it wasn't challenging work necessarily. But it was a really good way to understand how the business world works. So yeah, I was there for 4.5 years. I did a couple of overseas trips during that time. That was one of the great things that working allowed me to do. So I went to the England and worked at London Zoo for a little while, and then came back to the insurance company. Again, it was still that time where you could walk back into the job if you had a little bit of experience. So it was quite a bit different from what it is now in terms of jobs and things. So it was like, I look back on that time quite fondly, but at the same time, it was almost a missed opportunity in that if I'd gone to university at that time, maybe things would have happened a little bit quicker than they did in terms of writing. But I don't regret it. It's just one of those things that might not necessarily have been the best decision at the time.
I think that's one of the things where we all could live in the woulda, coulda, shouldas. In true reality, People like
Yeah.
doing that when something's a little misstep or something's not gelling the right way. But I believe that everything happens for a reason. I hate sayings, but I swear they all work for a reason. Like the sayings exist for a reason. When you're working at a zoo, and mind you, the zoo, I felt like it prepared you for when you started working with, when you met me. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Like 100%.
Yeah.
You go to a zoo in London. What's your job? And how the hell did you get to a zoo? Because you could have left and you could have picked any job. Why a zoo?
I've always loved animals. And it was a weird thing. So it wasn't intended to be the zoo to start with. So there was a sort of a conservation society that is in the it is part of Jersey and the Channel Islands. So the islands between England and France. And so originally I thought, well, I'll just write to them because these are the days before email. So you have to write letters and wait months for replies. And see, like I wanted to do an overseas trip. So why don't I go and see if I can go and work there? And they didn't have anything for me. So then I thought, well, I'll just write to the London Zoo, the Regent Park Zoo, and go, look, I'm coming over. Have you got anything? And they wrote back and said, well, we've got this kind of intern program. So you can come over. We can't really pay you anything, but it's, you get to do everything that the zookeepers do. So I went to London, incredibly massive culture shock compared to Wellington. Wellington's got about 350,000 people. London's got about 5 million or whatever it is. And yeah, so I did the keeper job. So it's cleaning out the enclosures, it's feeding, preparing the food and feeding the animals and being there when. So I was there when a baby giraffe, like an hour after a baby giraffe was born. So you get to do all these amazing things, and I would have stayed longer, but I think the culture shock was too much for me at that stage. I was only 19. It was very much I knew no one in London. So after about 3 or 4 months, I think I just had enough of that and decided it was a bit too hard. But yeah, animals always been a big part.
But I think it's amazing because at 19 years old, you just left the country, which is amazing. Working at a zoo, I think that's on my list. It's on my bucket list. And mind you, I have three lists. I have the bucket list, I have the OMG list, and I have the holy crap that will never happen list. And that's definitely on my bucket list, where just working at an aquarium or working at a zoo. But I would be intimidated by so many of those animals. And you're 19 years old, you're in another country, and you're not even fazed by, or were you fazed by any of these animals that you had to take care of?
Well, to start with, no, because they put me in with the with the hooved animals. So you've got the deer and the giraffe so it's that kind of probably the least intimidating animals that are there. And then I did spend a little bit of time with the monkeys and the apes. So and that was more sweet than anything else. Although you get a little bit freaked out when they tell you that the orangutans just spend all day trying to pick the locks of their cage. So you're wondering whether you're going to come in one morning and find an orangutan in the staff room. But that was probably the most interesting part, because I got to go in with baby chimpanzees, and you get to really kind of interact. A lot of the animals you can't actually go into the enclosures with because they're still wild animals. I mean, even if it's just a deer, you don't want to freak them out. They could actually still hurt you. So going in with the chimpanzees, where they were like little kids, you tell one of them off and the others will run over and put their arms around them and comfort them. And so that was really great. And then I did spend a little bit of time with the lions and the tigers, and that was probably, again, you don't go in with them. In fact, there's a line on the ground next to the cage where they're like, don't go over this line, because if you get too close to the cage and they just stick their claws up, they could rip your arm. So that became a little bit more intimidating as I went on.
That is I don't like regular cats, I like cat videos, but I
Yeah.
don't like cats just because sometimes they're just not nice. They're just not nice. When I'm in a safari,
Yeah.
I'm a big, I want to see you in your own habitat. It breaks my heart to see zoos. I mean, I get it, but I don't like it. But I get it. When they are, like how they have a lot more of the ones that are hurt, and they're retiring in these locations. I'm 100% for that, but a typical zoo and things like that, I'm not a big fan of. So I think to be in a situation where you're able to interact with these animals, I think is by far such a beautiful, beautiful moment. And to see them in a way that most people wouldn't be able to engage with them, because in the wildlife you don't engage with them. You get to see them from afar. You don't engage at all because they're not used to you and they don't want you nearby, or they're scared of you, etc. So I think that's absolutely fantastic in regard to stimulating your brain of all these different things that can happen.
Yeah, although having said that, like the year after I did that, I actually went to Kenya in Africa and did a safari, and in a way that almost put me off zoos, because I'm glad I did it that way. So I got to see them in captivity, and then I did get to see them in the wild, and it was, again, it was amazing and slightly scary and sad in a way as well, because we were in this big, massive old Bedford truck with open sides. So if anyone wanted to, any of these animals wanted to pop in,
oh, absolutely,
they could have. And we were, at one point we pulled over and there was a lion lying on the ground next to the truck, and they were like, "Oh yeah, he's protecting his mate who's hidden in the covers." So if that lion wanted to jump up, he could have. There was, you do kind of get that amazing ability to see them in the wild while also, being a little bit sad about it, because we saw a cheetah that had killed a deer. So they'd chase down a deer, they kill a deer, which is part of the circle of life. That's fine. But then the problem with these safaris is that there's so many of them going on at the same time. So this poor cheetah was literally surrounded by vans of people who were wanting to take photos of him. So there was no kind of privacy of, I've just eaten, I'm tired, I want to lie down, because there was about 15 vans all circled around them. So even back then, and again, that was 1990, I think, there's this kind of encroachment on the natural habitat of humans. So it does still impact you, I think.
Quick thing before I move on to you coming back to the States. When I went on a safari in 2004, I on purpose travel off season, so that way I'm not with tourists. And so when we went out, there was only our car and it was myself and a British couple, and it was a lioness for 2 cubs and a kudu that she killed, a fresh kudu, and it was the most amazing thing, because you're right, like open, and you're like, at any time she can come in here, but then your mind says she won't leave her kids. She won't leave her kids. So that was the thing, where the lion could jump, but he won't leave her, knowing that she's in the brush. And so it is one of those moments where your mind, once you stop being scared, your mind kind of clicks in, like I go, in true reality, there would be a reason for her to come in here, because she wouldn't leave why she's there. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you work the 9 to 5, and then you come back into the States. Why did you decide to come back? Because are you now getting older? Are you feeling more like, I kind of liked it?
Well, this was 20. So I was 22 when I came back to the States, and so I was still young. I still had that kind of wanderlust going on in terms of travel, and the States was amazing, but it was so different from England and Africa and the other places that I'd been. And I was going over to work in the camps, so there was kind of a reason for traveling. And I did stop over in some small towns on the way over.
Whoa. So I know the story. People that are listening to you don't know the story. So when you say camp, no one knows what that means. So can you please, why did you pick this job? Let's just talk about that a little bit, because that continues on to a lot of my other questions.
Okay, so I saw an advertisement in the paper in Wellington for anyone who's interested in being a camp counselor at an American summer camp. Come along to this hotel on this day and we'll tell you all about it. And I'd never really considered it, but I thought it was a good way, it might potentially be a good way to just kind of get over there and see different parts of America. So I went along to this meeting and I thought, yeah, that sounds really good. And then you kind of put your application in and generally say what sort of camps you'd like to go to, whether you want to go to a city camp or a scout camp or a ranch or whatever. And so I put these things down, and then they sort of get back in touch and go, this camp director is interested in you. It's in this place called Sharon, Massachusetts. If you're interested, then we'll hook you two up in terms of communicating with each other, and then you sort of talk directly to the director and they go, yep, these are the dates, this is what we need, this is what it's going to involve. It sounded fascinating to me. And again, I wanted to travel, and this seemed to be a good way to do it. So I went over. It was, we got 3 days of training in Los Angeles on the way over, which was really not training at all. It was sitting around in a room listening to people talk and then going and having a drink. So it was a massive shock to show up at this camp and find that I actually had to look after kids. But it was an amazing experience, and we still keep in touch. I still keep in touch with people. It was hard work. It was eye-opening.
And you did it for was it 2 or 3 summers? I forgot.
2 years. Yeah, I did it for 2 summers. So obviously I enjoyed it the first year. But and probably sort of 60% of that is the people that you meet. So you get to meet, because we had a mixture of international counselors and American counselors. So like you get to meet people from all over the world as well as people from all over the US. So 60% of the reason you come back is for the people that you meet, and the 40% is the work, because it is enjoyable. I mean, it's frustrating and annoying, and you've got to be a lot more careful over there than in terms of interacting with kids than you do in New Zealand. But which sounds bad. I'm not sure.
I know.
Why.
I was gonna say, that didn't sound right the way it came out.
No. So it just, there are a lot more laws over there, I think, in terms of how you can interact with the kids. And like over here, back then, there was no, like, if you needed to stop a kid from leaving, you could grab them by the arm and go, you can't leave. But there's always that sort of hesitation in America of, if you grab someone by the arm, are you then going to get hauled away? So there's that kind of culture difference as well. That was an eye-opener as part of that whole kind of summer, the first summer. But yeah, I loved it. And at the end of the summer, a bunch of us went up to Maine, and so you kind of got a little bit more of seeing places, and being based just south of Boston, it was great. We could go into the city, we could go to Rhode Island and Connecticut, and so it was a good place to kind of see that whole New England area of the country.
I have to say that.
And then I went back and
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I came back to New Zealand, really just kind of filled in time between, because it's only about 8 or 9 months between finishing and then going back for the next year, and just filled in time, like painted people's fences and garages and things, and because I knew that I wanted to go back, so there was no point getting a proper job, and then went back again, because it was a really great experience.
I agree with you. So I was there for 4 summers and 2 full seasons. So there was the connection of like being there a full year the summer. Wait, you were 22 when you came in. I was 23, 24, and I had never met. I mean, like I had never met, other than my relatives that were coming in from other countries. I had never met kids like the younger than me or my age that were from all over the world. And you guys are the ones that got me excited about leaving home, like leaving and traveling and doing things, because I knew I could be done. I did it with my family. But when I met you guys, I'm like, what do you mean you're here by yourself? What do you mean your parents aren't with you? Like, what do you mean? I don't understand. So that was like so exciting to meet all of you guys. And yes, we were working with these ornery kids. Those kids.
Yeah.
I mean, and I mean, you were a counselor. I was a CIT director, a counselor and training director, and I'm still friends with. They're my kids. I mean, like I'm friends with all of them. I should say all of them. Like out of the 50, I have 35 of them still in my world. But these kids really brought a whole new excitement, frustration, thought process of where we're going to go for our future. So it was really good to hear that. But it got me going in regards of when you said you started writing children's books. I wanted to hold on to that. That's why I wanted to have you talk about that a little bit. But before we start talking about that, so you go back home after the second year. Now what happens?
So this is when it starts becoming well, so going back a little bit, so the other great thing about being at camp is that you're kind of surrounded by a lot of like-minded people in terms of there's a lot of creativity bouncing around. So that really got me back into writing again. So I started writing some poems and some songs and some little short stories and things. So when I went back the second year, I came back to New Zealand, I enrolled in a, I guess we call it a polytech, you call it probably a community college, and did a 1-year course in publishing. So there was a choice of either publishing or writing. And again, my brain was saying, look, you can't make it full-time as a writer, so do the publishing, because then you're still in the industry, but you're getting paid for it. And so I did that, and then I did a lot of work around that for 2 or 3 years in terms of editing some pretty big documents, getting them to publishing states and things. And then again, kind of reality sets in. So you're working for yourself, so that it's very much either a feast or a famine with work. You've either got more than you can handle, or there's none at all, and that became quite tiring after a while. And I was in a new relationship at the time, so it was really it became important to me to have a regular paycheck.
But wait a second, but when you were editing, when you were editing, were you editing for a company or were you editing for yourself? And with that, how odd was it for you, like knowing that you have a writer in you and now you're editing somebody else's words?
Well, I mean, luckily I was editing, I wasn't editing fiction or anything, so that would have been stranger. But so the first year that I was doing it, I edited the Victoria University is the big university for Wellington. So I edited their student calendar. So all of the courses, everything. So that's all put together into one big book, sort of 500-page book. So I was coordinating and editing that. So that was really easy in terms of not being strange about someone else's written stuff that I'm not writing it and I don't understand that. So that made that kind of relatively easy to do. And there was things like bed and breakfast books and things. So it was all kind of that sort of thing rather than the fiction side, which I was still writing the fiction side a little bit. So it would have been harder to do that, I think. So yeah, and I could have kept going with that. I think I could have persevered, but like I said, it was either, here, we've got this job for you that will last 3 months, or you're scrambling around trying to find work, and that became quite disheartening after a while. So yeah, so I got a job at a private company. I stayed there for 11 years. So
doing what and at this point?
So a huge number of jobs. So I worked in a call center. I worked as a product manager for we call it superannuation. I guess you call it 401k, so retirement kind of savings.
Mhm.
So I was product managers for there. So again, I worked my way up through there to the point where I was reasonably senior towards the end. But 11 years was a long time, and a lot happened to me, personally in that time. I got married, I got divorced, I got married again. So there was a lot happening outside of life. I was still writing. I wrote 2 or 3 plays that were produced and put on at local amateur theatre. So I was still doing that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I did actually write my first children's book then as well. I didn't publish it, but I sort of wrote it and put it in a drawer for 10 years until I bought it out again a few years ago.
So now you start getting
Yeah.
a nice now you start getting a nice flow of writing plays. You used to be a publisher, editor, like, I mean, you used to do all these things, but now the writer's coming out. Talk
Yeah.
about that, because right now all over the world there are people that they've been stagnant. They've had the same jobs. They've just been doing things that just are not desirable, but they're paying the bills. They're passionate about something. And so they don't know where to start. They don't know how to get going. They're stuck. They're stuck and they're scared. So 11 years at a job that you're at a senior level at this point, what would you tell anybody that is listening to you right now that is wondering, one, how did he do it? And two, how did he navigate that fear? Because fear is the ultimate barrier of making sure anything happens for anyone, especially a creative. So what was that moment?
I think so. Yes, there's two sides to that. So it is hard to work full time and then try and write. You have to be disciplined about it, because I would struggle with the fact that I was in front of a computer for 8-9 hours a day, and then you'd go home and the last thing you'd want to do was get back on a computer and try and think creatively. So there does need to be that kind of discipline about, even if you write for 15 minutes a night, that's better than nothing. It's getting stuff down on the page that counts.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point having the best idea in the world for something if it stays in your head. So yeah, I did struggle with that for a long time. And I guess I don't want to say lucky, because it's not lucky. It was a horrible time in my life, but we had the ability where I could give up my full-time job, because both my parents passed away, and so there was a little bit of income that came out of that, which meant that we didn't have this massive, gigantic bills to pay all the time, and so that allowed me to have the time to treat writing as a job rather than as a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
But for people that can't do that, I think that the key is, it is scary, and especially when you're writing something and you don't know if it's good. But find people that you trust that will give you an honest opinion, and let them see it. And also know that whatever you're writing is not going to be perfect when you write it. Like, not even the best writers in the world get edited multiple times before their book comes out. So if you write something and you're not sure if it's good, it might not be good in its current form, but the idea and the bones might be there. So give it to someone that you trust, not someone that you know is going to say this is fantastic, but someone that you know that will say, yeah, look, I like it. It's a bit rusty, but I really like what you're trying to do, because that's the sort of encouragement that will help you keep going.
I always tell people that you want to have someone in your life that will go jean shopping with you and say, those jeans don't look good on you, because
Yeah.
And I think that's what then I use that analogy, because jeans either look good on you or they don't look good on you. It's one or the other. Jeans, like leggings, well, leggings are just like leggings, but I mean, jeans are just, they're like a 5-year-old child that tells you the truth in every single way.
Yeah.
And so it is true, but it's hard. So how did you find, because when you are being creative, you are putting you're putting yourself out there. I mean, like, you are peeling your skin off and you're putting yourself out there raw. So how do you find that person? Because you automatically assume, oh, my best friend or my wife or my husband. Who is the person that you would pick? Because how do you find the person that would be truthful to you, but at the same time help you grow and not just kind of stroke your ego?
Well, yeah, it is tricky. It is. You've got to, and sometimes it's trial and error trying to find that person. And I think, I mean, early on, I wrote a novella, so a short novel that I'd sent off to an agent who I didn't know. And she was quite encouraging. And that's probably more nerve-wracking, because I think a lot of people think, I'll write a book and then I'll just send it off to a publisher and I don't know whether they're going to like it or not. But there's kind of these interim steps in between there. So I think it's finding that person, like you said, who's not afraid to tell you that those jeans don't look good on you. So that's the sort of person that you know will be truthful. But it's really important that you find someone that's truthful in a constructive way. So there's no point giving your work to your sister or your brother if they're going to come back and go, this is rubbish. Without going, this is rubbish because I didn't like this. I thought this character was bad. So you almost need to sound out and study your friends and your family first and try and work out which of those you think will actually fit that description. But there is a real, there's definitely, especially for writers, I think there's a real kind of desire to go, I know this person will say nice things about it, so I'm going to give it to them because that'll make me feel like this whole thing wasn't a waste of time and I've got some talent, so I'll do it. But in the long run, that's not going to help at all. And in fact, I know this is jumping ahead a little bit, but in the sort of self-published author community, there's almost like you're not a real author until you get a 1-star review on Amazon or Goodreads, because the reality is you're not gonna please everybody at all. There are going to be people that aren't going to like it. And if you look on, especially if you go on Goodreads, you pick one of the classics, one of the literary classics, there will be 1 or 2-star reviews on there. So it's almost like if you've got a lot of 4-star reviews and this person doesn't like it, then you know that all these 4-star reviews are probably honest. And so therefore, you've sort of really properly arrived as an author. So that honesty is a massive thing.
I think, and
if you're not sure you can find
the what?
Sorry, I was just going to say, if you're not sure you can find that one person that do it, then choose 2 or 3. So just pick 2 or 3 people and say to them right up front that you are interested in an honest, constructive opinion, not a gushing kind of, oh, I loved it, it was fantastic, it was the best thing I've ever read, because the chances of that being the case for a first draft are so slim that if someone says that, either you are the literary find of the century or they're not being wholly truthful to you. So
I feel like finding a great person that can read your book and give their opinion is like finding that right person to go on holiday with. Because for me, traveling is so part of everything that I do. It's like it's me breathing, that I don't want to go with someone that's going to ruin the location for me, because it would break me, because I love it so much. It's my way of just fueling my brain. So I've yet to like find the person that you're looking, but I mean, I've only written certain things. I haven't written a full-on book yet. So golly gee, that's gonna be tricky one day, because everyone does have a book in them. So that'll be tricky.
Yeah.
Now you have 11 books. Tell me about the first book being like out there. Like, I mean, you had that children's book that you wrote, but you just kind of put it in the drawer. You had all these little things. You had plays, but now you have that first book, but now there's 11 too. So the experience of the first and the experience of the now.
So the first I did as part of this kind of course that I did when I gave up work. I did a year-long course where you spend the whole year working on one manuscript. So the first book, Troy's Possibilities, came out of working on that for 12 months. And you know, it's an amazing thing. It's just watching how it develops from the initial idea. And that was really good too, because we had 10 people in the course and you'd get feedback from them. And there were some scenes that I wrote that they were like, oh, no. And so you get that real kind of honest, instant feedback. So, I mean, that was a really good eye-opening experience to put that out. And I love that book. And I get people asking me when I'm going to write a follow-up to it. But it was a real eye-opener in terms of how book writing is a business, as opposed to, I think I always had this kind of thought that when you're an author, you write the book and then your job's kind of done. You move on, you write the next book. But these days, more than any time in publishing, writing the book is probably only about 40% of it, and the rest of it is marketing it and promoting it and selling it. And that first book was a real learning experience for. I wrote it and then I put it up on Amazon, and it's like, well, what category does it fit in? And I'm like, I actually don't know what category it fits in or what genre it is. And so, you know, so it was quite difficult to kind of work that side of the business out. Whereas, and then the book after that was the first cozy murder mystery, which was a lot easier to kind of pigeonhole in categories, because people like to know either what can you compare this book to something else that I may have read, or what genre is it in. So you can go, well, it's a cozy mystery, so it's, you know, it's, think Agatha Christie, think, you know, from a TV program, think Murder, She Wrote, that kind of thing.
I mean, but the thing is, I guess, I'm so happy you said it. When you in the introduction, you said cozy mystery. I'm like, I don't think I've ever, it's mystery, but I've never heard that terminology. Is that an inside shop word? Because if I'm looking for a book, it's under mystery, but I never thought about a cozy. And when I'm thinking about Agatha Christie, I don't know if I would have ever put it as cozy or like the party boys or things like that. So where did that come from? Because
so it is a subgenre of mysteries.
Okay.
So if you go on Amazon, for example, and look up cozy mysteries, then it is a genre. So you will open it up. But if you went into a bookshop, there would be murder mysteries or mysteries. So it wouldn't differentiate that.
Okay.
So I mean, the biggest difference is, so like I said earlier, there's no blood and guts in murder mysteries. It's about solving the mystery, not about, let's spend half a page describing this guy's head that's been chopped off and is sitting in the oven. So, you know, there's generally no profanity. There's no real sex. There's no, so it's
well,
very.
all right, so that's the thing where most people are so much into the shock and awe, and so that's why I feel like all those things are added in, but it doesn't take away. I mean, and I love using the analogies of, you can get the naked woman, or you can get the woman in the lingerie, and your mind is like the enjoyment of it, of like, just like, I mean, like of designing what comes next. And so I hear that from my guy friends all the time, like either or, and I'm like, and we have big discussions about it, and I crack up because I'm like, oh yeah, I go, that's actually very true. And so with the mystery, I always find it's like a puzzle. And like, I mean, so I always gravitated towards the Sherlock Holmes, but the murder ones were like, yeah, they're interesting as long as you're right. As long as there's no gore, as long as there's no all that other horrible stuff, because then I'm like, I'm afraid to leave my house.
Yeah, well, it is. And I think, I mean, I'm not taking away from people that write like that, but it doesn't really add anything to the mystery side of things. And if you read the Agatha Christie books, you know, there's obviously back then they didn't swear in books, so there's very little to no sex at all. But there's not really a big massive description of the body or anything. It's more about Miss Marple or Hercule Poirot, you know, solving the mystery.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So how does it evolve? So like I mean, look, the thing that you've done, I know you're juggling the house. The thing that you've done is.
Sorry, keep going. Yeah.
Which child is that?
That was my daughter. She's telling me that she's going to be late for school shortly. So
wait, okay. Wait, are you bringing her to school?
I am, but that's okay. We've got 5 more minutes.
Okay, so oh my God, 5 more minutes. Oh my God, the pressure. So the thing is, so you went from, you wrote the cozy mysteries, you've gone to writing children's books. I mean, you've jumped around and you've done so many different things. Most people stick to the course of one thing and one thing only. As a writer, there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there they jump from different things, and then they're always told you should stick to one thing and one thing only. Why did you choose to go the route of different genres?
Well, I mean, the first one, as I said, Troy's Possibilities, the first one was more, it was an idea. I didn't really know what the genre was going to be, and I just wrote it. And it did turn out to be probably a bit more heavier and dramatic than the style of writing that I'm usually used to doing. The probably the reason from a author point of view why they say stick to one genre is audience building. So if you write a series, so the Cozy Mysteries, I've got 2 series going, and you build up an audience over a set of series. So if I write 3 Cozy Mysteries, by the time I get to the 3rd one, I've got people going, when's the next one coming out? But if I write 2 Cozy Mysteries and then I go and write a science fiction and then I go and write something else, then you are like the people who read the Cozy Mysteries are not likely to read science fiction. So you're almost having to start your whole audience building again. So I think that's the reason why from a book writing point of view, they say don't jump genres too much. Like it's a bit different going from Cozy Mysteries to kids books because you've got a clearly different audience. Like the Cozy Mysteries, but the general readers for those are over 50s, whereas obviously the kids books are aimed at specific ages, so that's a bit different. But yeah, from a business point of view, it would be like you produce shoes and then you decide to go out and make a watch as well. It's like the people that buy the shoes might not buy the watch, so you're basically trying to start again, which is not good from a business point of view.
Okay. Because I know we're limited time, so I'm going to ask you the last question, but then I have a follow-up. So if you had a personal ask and a professional ask of anyone that's listening to you right now, what would be your personal ask and what would be your professional ask?
So the personal ask, I would just say to anyone that buys a book from a self-published author especially, is reviews are really important. And like anything, if you go on and try and discover a new author, if you go onto Amazon, you look at the reviews generally. So if you read a book and you like a book, then review it, because that really helps the authors keep going. And it's kind of good validation and ego boost as well, assuming it's a good review. So professional ask, I guess it is just a bit more of a tricky one. I guess it is just there's still a little bit more. There's still a little bit of a superiority complex with professional, like the big publishing firms compared to self-publishing. But the end result is the same. We're putting books out. Self-published authors still go through the same process, still all professionally produced. So in terms of the book thing, it's better if everyone kind of work together and we don't have that kind of we're better than you because we're the big authors and the big publishers and that kind of thing. So I think let's work together, because the readers are the ones that benefit the most from that.
I agree with you 100%, because like that whole entire concept of the record industry changed because of that. So I'm happy that you said that, because it's so important that people understand that great content is great content no matter where it comes from. And so to be able to support an author across the board is ginormous. And when you grow your own followers, those big publishing houses come looking for you because you've done all the work that they won't do for smaller readers. Number one. I love Troy's Possibilities. I'm one of those people, like I'm a big fan of audiobooks because I move so fast. I love running to books. I love cleaning my house to books. Last year during the pandemic, 52 books. I had a book every week. I had a new book on audio. Your book was the only one that I literally sat down on the couch, so excited every day to read. It was so different than what I was ever noticed or read. So I was super excited about that. So I cannot wait for the next one. The this will be another conversation because I know your daughter has to go to school because the 18 hours difference. So I know she has to go to school, but I mean, I love this. I love the start of the conversation. I mean, I write children's books. You write so many other books. You inspire me so much in getting excited about doing what I do. So I'm very, very happy that we got to talk. I don't even care that I was sped through the end because we got to know who you were and where the process was of like how you became this author. So I love that I took my time, and I would rather use the time and get to know you, and we can sit there and talk again at a later time. And literally whenever you put out a book, we can sit there and talk. But I love that you are so dedicated to your craft, and you started when you were younger, and we know where you came from, why you're doing what you do, and also just the fact that you work with kids and you're writing children's books. So you got to see kids from all different locations. You got to work with animals, that whole entire creativity. I feel that your life has been full circle to where you are right now. So I adore you. I love you. You are so, so awesome. And okay, now you can go bring your daughter to school.
Well, it was great talking to you. I really appreciate it. And yeah, hopefully we can talk again.
No, absolutely. I mean, like, this is not the last conversation, but I mean, I do really like, I think I'm going to get all the people that I know that have written books at one point to all together. But I mean, this is like just like a great way for people to get to know you guys, because what other platform that's going to be on a global platform where this random person that you know will just bring random people together. So why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, perfect.
Yay.
Okay.
I love you, my friend. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Look at her. Ah, I see a little, hello, beautiful.
She's like,
Hi, how are you?
She's like, come on, Dad, for God's sake, I'm late for school.
All right, I'm sorry. It was Jodi's fault.
Yeah.